Okay, let's talk about my beloved Boston Celtics, who are now 5-5 in their last 10. They have a 1 game lead on the Sixers for the 2 seed after having a 5.5 game lead on the 1 seed, which would felt like, I don't know, a month and a half ago or whatever. They lost to the Rockets last night. They've had some rough losses to Cleveland, the Nets, the Knicks. Some of those games they had a pretty big lead that just dwindled away. So, what's going on? Well, as far as common themes before I dive into the specific games, the 5-out motion offense that for the first, I don't know, 2 months of the season or whatever, that was just devastating everybody. It does have more moments where everything's just kind of slowing down. Some of that is due to like switching defense. Like when I get to the recent Cavs loss, I think that was the biggest example of a switching defense really slowing down their motion stuff and egging them on to be more of an ISO heavy team, which at times they can still make you pay for that. You know, Brogdon can beat somebody off the dribble. Obviously, Tatum and Jalen can make tough shots, but it's a lot different than guys flying around and off ball actions and all that. However, I also think sometimes, like let's say they're running a stagger screen for Jalen or whatever, sometimes those screens might just be a little weak to where you're not really creating an advantage, or maybe it all happens too slowly. And on the defensive side of the floor, it feels like there's just too many plays right now where something just goes wrong, as basic as that sounds, where it's like, to be fair, I'm not saying they're suddenly terrible defensively. They still have good defensive possessions. But, I remember one in the Rockets game where Tatum and Derek White kind of had a miscommunication where I think one of them thought it was like fighting around a screen, another one thought it was a switch, so Jalen Green's getting something open to the rim. I remember Emmanuel Quickly, one of his big threes was like pretty open in transition, like a trailing three where nobody really picked him up. Dorian Finney-Smith had himself a few open transition threes in their recent one to the Nets where both Time Lord and Horford thought the other one was getting him, so nobody got him, or he had another one where like Jalen had to sprint from one side of the floor to the other because he thought that somebody else had him. Anyway, I mentioned the switching defense thing. I want to go to the recent Cavs game. Evan Mobley in the fourth quarter had so many possessions where he switched onto Jalen, and it pretty much blew up the Celtics' whole offense. Now, Tatum was not playing in that game. I don't really care because the Celtics had like an 11-point lead in the fourth quarter or whatever it was. There was another play where Mobley was guarding Luke Cornett, which means he wasn't guarding Luke Cornett as Cornett was in the corner. And so they ran a really nice cut play. They got Jalen going to the rim, but then it was just him and Mobley, so Mobley blocked his shot. The most memorable thing of the Cavs game was the Grant Williams 2 missed free throws at the end when he said he was going to make them, but there were like a set of Garland 3-pointers in that fourth where it's like Lamar Stevens comes in and grabs an offensive rebound around like 4 Celtics, which is a little thing where like their defensive rebound percentage is really good for the season, and even so, there's moments where they just appear really, really small. Anyway, an O-board from Stevens into a Garland 3. Another one which was a transition Garland 3 where Marcus bites on a Garland pump fake, and then he's basically wide open. There's no other closeout. It's like, well, that wasn't great. The loss to the Knicks. So, of course, there was the play that sticks out of my head the most, which was one of those quickly late dunks where I believe he got by Grant, and Tatum was high up on the other side of the screen, and so Jalen was coming from the weak side and a little bit of help, but it was way too late, and it was like, that was not a very encouraging defensive possession. And, like, sure, Quickly had a couple of tough threes in that one. He made a couple of floaters over Grant Williams. Julius Randle also had a couple of his signature, just how the hell did you make that jumpers, which he makes every game. But on top of like that one Quickly 3 I mentioned earlier, the trailing one, there was one where he crosses over as he's rejecting a screen, basically freezes Marcus, and then it's a kick out to Josh Hart in the corner. Horford is too slow to close out to that one. Like, it's just these one-off plays that don't feel huge when they happen, but then you think about the game and it's like, well, there were like 12 plays where it was like, what the hell happened there? Kind of similar to their recent loss against the Nets where they were up by 1,000,000 points after the first quarter. And then by like late second, well, real quick, in the first quarter, they were switching almost everything against the Nets, and it was really bothering the Nets, and they couldn't really get a lot of driving lanes. And they adjusted a little bit, partially by just speeding up and like trying to attack the Celtics before they really could set their defense. I mentioned the Dorian Finney-Smith threes earlier, and like, yeah, Mikal Bridges had some tough threes. Dinwiddie had effectively the dagger like midway through the fourth where he made a step back over Horford. Another one in that Nets game where Dinwiddie, he attacks really early and he kicks it out to, I don't remember who, but then both Jalen and Marcus go to close out on the guy, and so it results in Mikal Bridges just wide open at the top of the key. So yeah, I don't know, it's just weird. Back to the offense, I mean, in that Knicks game, like the Knicks, they don't switch everything as much as maybe other teams will. They still switch stuff, don't get me wrong, but like they'll try to deny screens more often and stuff. And like you'll have plays where it's like Hartenstein playing high up on a Jalen Horford screen, blows the play up, and then it becomes, we got to figure it out in an ISO or just some desperate passes. And also, shout out to Emmanuel Quickly, who continues his role player all-star brigade. He had a sequence where He comes out of nowhere to block a Jalen turnaround jumper in the post, which I don't really know how I feel about the Tatum-Jalen baseline to elbow ISOs that pop up occasionally. For all I know, they're statistically great. I don't know. But he does that, then he makes something on the other end, and then he has like a steal where it's a Smart Horford pick and pop, and then Smart's like looking around for a desperate pass back to Horford, quickly steals it, goes the other way. It's like this guy's the guy. As for the Rockets' loss, so shout out to Jabari for one. The guy had 24 points, and there were a few of those threes, he made 5 of them, where they were playing off of him pretty aggressively, and the Rockets just made the right passes, and he beat him on them. I remember there was one he made over Blake Griffin, where Blake wasn't exactly glued to him up top, and Jabari's been scoring lately, so we're happy for him there. And I guess I can use the Celtics offense against the Rockets as a 3-point attempts spiel, which I feel like I've done a few times this year already. In fact, it might be word for word from the last time I said it. Against the Rockets, they shot 42 threes and they shot 29% on them. Of course, I am in support of three-pointers. Get your 3-point attempts up, all that stuff, assuming the right players are taking them. But as I think about some of their attempts against the Rockets in those 42 threes, like there was one where Marcus was open in the corner. In transition, he missed the 3. I mean, of course, defenses are daring Marcus Smart to take those shots. And like if he makes it, great. But also, there was an opportunity for him to attack off the catch, which could have led to, if not him scoring at the rim, maybe somebody cutting because the defense is collapsing into contested basic basketball stuff. Also, side note, Marcus has had the ball a little bit less recently. I think the best version of this team is Marcus being more of your classic point guard who sets up the offense but doesn't take as many shots. So we'll see there, I don't know. There was a similar one from Derek White, I remember, transition corner 3, where it's like, well, maybe you could attack off the catch there. And again, if it goes in, well, I guess I'm not complaining, but it just seems like they probably have like 5 or 6 threes a game, and this is from everybody on the roster, where like it could have been an attack off the catch, whether it be in the full court, the half court, or whatever. And of course, if it's a good shooter taking an open 3, I'm never going to complain about that. So I don't know. Can they generate more stuff at the rim when Rob is just not in there? Well, the thing is, like, Horford's just old, so there might have been a time where you could run like all those elbow actions to have cutters around him and stuff, and then if you give him space, he'll like go in the post and try to do some work, but like, you just can't ask old as hell Al Horford to do that every night at this point, given that he still has such a large responsibility on defense and still plays a lot of minutes and all that. So what does all this mean? I don't know. But falling to number 3 behind Philly would not be ideal.